Hello my lovelies, this is your girl Angel from Simply Angel Tiah. In this video I'm going to show you guys how to crochet this off shoulder top. As you can see here, it's all done. I'm just gonna have to show you guys how to get it all done like this. And as you can see here, it's a little bit big on top. The neckline is super big so that it goes off shoulder. You can wear it so that the neckline comes low on your top here, or you can throw it off shoulder so that one side is hanging off and the other side is kind of, you know what I mean. You know what I mean by off shoulder. This is super nice. So hopefully you guys will be able to watch the video to the end. So thank you so much again. So go ahead and grab your stuff so we can get started. Okay, I'll show you exactly what I use so you know exactly what to bring to your work table as well. Okay my lovelies, so before we get this project started, I'm going to show you all the materials that I used. And as you can see here, I'm using this yarn by CraftSmart Value TM. It is 100% acrylic. It's a medium weight number 4. Recommended hook size is 5.5 millimeter crochet hook or I9 US. Okay, the color is called Ivy. Okay, I will probably be referring to it a lot in the video as green, but the official color is called Ivy. And for the measurements units, as you can see here, these are all the measurements or the weights of the yarn per skein. I'll be using about a skein and a half of this to do my top. And yeah, like I said, these are the measurements, so you could pretty much understand how much you need based on the measurements here. Okay, all right, so for the crochet hook I'm using the recommended size, which is the 5.5 millimeter crochet hook or I9 US. I need a scissors to cut my strands at the end. You need a darning needle to be able to sew together your panels or to weave in any ends. It's always good to have a stitch marker around. You could probably do that the stitch marker, but I would recommend to have one just so you can keep your stitches and the counting on point. And of course you need a tape measure because we're making something that is wearable. So if you need to know the size that you're making for yourself or for someone else, then it's always good to know the measurements. As always, I'll be making one for myself. So I know my measurements. I'm a small. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to get this project started, we're going to start with the most favorite thing that most projects start with, which is a slip knot. Okay, and we're going to do a slip knot. I do mine like this. I will slip it off my thumb. I will take my hook, put it in the little circle there, yarn over, pull it through. When I have it there, I let go of what I'm holding between my thumb and my middle finger, and that's my slip knot. Okay, now we're going to create our foundation chain, and I'm going to do, for my size, I'm going to do a foundation chain of 60, and this is the length of my top. Okay, so it goes from where I want it to start down on my torso and going up all the way, covering my top, going up towards my neck. Okay, so I'm going to be doing 60 stitches, 60 chains. So 1 2 3 4 5. Okay guys, so this is my chain of 60 here. Okay, so as you can see, that is the length of it. If I just take my tape measure here and measure in inches, so if I go from where my chain ends here and I go all the way down, okay, as you can see, this is about 15 unstretched inches. Okay, and I'm going to add one more. This is usually just roughly, I'm not doing that to be exactly accurate, but I'm going to add one chain here for my turning chain, okay, which doesn't count as a stitch in this case. And then I'm going to start my first row. I'm going to skip this chain that I just created now, and in this 60th chain here, I'm going to go in the back of that, and I'm going to do a single crochet stitch just like that, and then I'm going to do that in the next stitch as well. So again, we're just going through the back of the chain. This is the front of our chain. If I flip it over, these are the back, and that's where I'm going into, and we're going to do this for 25 stitches. So as you can see here, I've done 3, 1 2 3, and I'm going to go ahead and do a total of 25. And when you have 25, then come back and we will change the stitch that we're doing for the remainder of the chain. See you guys in a bit. Okay guys, so I have completed 25 stitches here of the single crochet in the back of the chain. So that is how it should look like, and that's still the remainder of my chain here. Okay, so I have my stitch marker here ready. So I'm going to put this stitch marker right here where that last stitch is, and I'm going to lock that in just like that. And then for the remainder 35 stitches here, I'm going to do double crochet stitches going in the back of the chain. Okay, so I'm just gonna, again, for those of you who are not familiar with double crochet stitch, I'm just gonna yarn over, go into the back of my 26 stitch there, and then yarn over, go through 2 loops, yarn over, go through the remaining 2. Okay, so and then you're gonna repeat that again. So go ahead and do that. When you get to the end of this row, come back and I will show you guys how to start the next row, our second row. See you guys in a bit. Okay guys, so I have gone ahead and completed my 35 rows stitches here of the double crochet stitch in the back of our chain. So as you can see, that's how it looks like, and we have our 25 stitches here of the single crochet stitch. Okay, so that's how your work should look like. Okay, now this is the part that's gonna go right, it's the bottom part of the top, and then this is the top, because it's gonna be a loose top and tight in the bottom type of shirt. This is why we're creating these kind of stitches to be different like this. Okay, all right, so I'm going to show you how to start the second row, and this is going to be your repeat row until you finish this panel of the top. So you're going to chain 1, okay, and this doesn't count as a stitch. You turn your work, and then in this very first stitch right here, right after your chain 1, you're going to yarn over and go in the back of that first stitch and do your double crochet stitch. Okay, and then you're going to continue to do your double crochet stitches in the back of the stitch to create this nice rib pattern for the top. Okay, and we're going to do this for the single crochet part as well. So you're just going to continue to do this until you get to the stitch marker. So your last double crochet stitch will be right this stitch here right before your stitch marker, because if you remember, the stitch marker was our last stitch for the single crochet stitch, so we need to work a single crochet into that stitch that has the stitch marker. Okay, but do your double crochet stitches until you go to the very first or the last before the stitch marker, and then come back and I'll show you what to do to change the stitch on that side. See you guys in a bit. Okay, so I have completed my 35 stitches here of the double crochet stitch in the back loop of the row, and as you can see here, I am just a stitch away from the stitch marker. So because we're changing the type of stitch we're doing, I'm going to remove my stitch marker there temporarily, put it on the side, and then in that next stitch I'm just going to do a single crochet stitch, replace the stitch marker back in that stitch, because we're always going to be doing it in that first or last, I should say, stitch of the single crochet stitch in the back loop. And then we're just going to move on and do the single crochets in the back loop throughout the remaining of the stitches here. And so go ahead and do that. When you get to the end, just come back and I'll show you how to turn and start that row, and then we should be able to repeat this until we have the size that we're looking for. Okay, see you guys in a bit. Okay guys, so I'm at the end of the second row, and I stopped here because for those of you who follow me, you will see that I do this often, but just in case you're new to my channel, so for this final stitch here, instead of going through the back loop only, I'm going to go through both loops like this to finish my final single crochet stitch. And I just find that it creates a nice cleaner edges, and I'll do that with this side as well. The very last stitch, I'm always going to do the double crochet on this side going through both loops, and then the single crochet on this side, the last one, I will be going through both loops of the final stitch. Okay, so again, this is how your work should look like. Okay, so for these sections here, like this side here, how did I decide how long this should be? I didn't really kind of have like a technique for it. I just wanted the size that's going to snatch kind of like my tummy to be a little bit longer. Instead of it being a small section like that, I want it to be a little bit longer. So this is going to go kind of like from just right of my belly button to just right underneath my breast, and then this is going to be the top of my top, okay, the top part of my top. So you can do this however you want. You could have done this a little bit shorter, you could have done it a little bit longer, it's up to you. Okay, all right, so I'm going to show you how to start this third row, and then I'm going to let you guys build up your top, because this is pretty much a repeat row. That what we just finished is your repeat row. So again, I'm going to chain one and turn. The chain one doesn't count as a stitch. And then in the back loop of the very first stitch right after the chain one, I'm going to do my single crochet stitch, and then I'm going to move on to the next stitch and do my single crochet stitch, and I'm going to continue this for the next 25 stitches. And then when I get to the stitch marker, which is my 25th single crochet stitch, I'm going to remove it, do my single crochet in the back loop of that stitch, replace my stitch marker, and then the next stitch after that should be double crochets for the next 35 stitches. And I'm going to do this back and forth until I get 40 rows total. Okay, so as you can see here, we just completed 2 rows. So go ahead and do however many that you require for your top. So the way you're going to determine how many rows you're going to do is depending on your size. So for me, it's a small. I am going to do about 40 rows total for the whole top. So this side is going to be absolutely loose, so I don't care so much to know what the size for that is. The size for this is gonna matter, because when I do 40, this is a tighter stitch. It's very stretchy, so when I stretch it, I should be able to get 15 inches, because my waist size is about 30. So if I put it and stretch it, I should get 15. And because we're doing 2 panels, I should have 15 for this panel and 15 for the next to make my 30. Okay, and that is when you fully stretch it. The top, because it's gonna be loose, you don't have to worry so much about that. Okay, so go ahead and do this. Get your number of rows that you require. I'm going to do my 40 rows, and when I get to the end, I'm going to come back and show you guys the completed panel, and then we can go ahead and start our second panel together. Okay, so see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, so I have gone ahead and completed my 40 rows for the first panel here. So as you can see here, this is going to be the bottom of my top, and this is how my 40 rows look like. And again, if you stretch it, for mine, I get about 15 inches, which is just the size that I'm looking for. So if you need for this to be more than 15 inches for this for each panel, then you need to continue building up your work until when you stretch it, you can get half of your torso circumference, okay, or your waist side circumference, half of that. And then for the top part, we don't really care too much about it. It's going to be loose on the top anyways, so we just have to worry mostly about this part here, because you don't want it to be too tight and you don't want it to be extremely loose, unless you want it to be loose actually. But yeah, so this is how your top should look like, at least the first panel of your top should look like. This is where I have my stitch marker here to mark my 25 stitches for the single crochet stitch and the 35 stitches for the double crochet stitch here. Okay, so that's where it is. So I have it done like this, and this is where mine, because I did 40 rows, this is where mine kind of ends. But I've already gone ahead and cut my yarn, and I left the string extremely long, as you can see here, because we're going to be using this string to weave or to sew the panel together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of finish these off here. So this was my final stitch done here, and it's going through the both loops like that. So I'm just going to kind of fasten it like this so it doesn't unravel. And as you guys can see as well, so when I go through the back loop of my final stitch, it creates this nice and even I guess lining like that, or the border, so that it's not kind of loose in some parts and tight in some parts. And as you will see, it's the same thing with the top, because we're not going to be doing anything else to border this. We're just going to be leaving it like that, and I think it looks nice just like that. So anyway, so that's it here. This is our first panel completed. Go ahead and duplicate this and get your second panel. So nothing changes, just repeat exactly what you did with this panel with the second one. And when you have your 2 panels completed, come back, and then we will be able to pretty much at that point sew our 2 panels together, and we have our top ready to be worn. Okay, so go ahead and start the second panel and come back when you have finished it and fasten, cut your yarn, leave it long so you can use it to sew it together, and then fasten it nice and tight. Okay, so see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, so I have completed my second panel here. So I have already kind of assembled my work, how I'm going to sew it together, as you can see here. So these are the two panels, okay? And they fit right together. It's a little bit not too straight here right now because we haven't sewn it yet. So we're gonna sew these sides here. And so what I did, and you can do these as well, is I sectioned out the section I'm not gonna sew or join. So this section here is going to be my arm, where my arm is gonna go through. So I'm gonna leave this part here open. Okay, so this is where my arm will be coming through here. So which means from where the stitch marker is all the way to the bottom here, it's going to be shut closed. And that of course is the exact same on this side as well. Okay, so I've put my stitch marker there. All right, so that is done here. So I'm going to start. Oh yeah, and the other thing, just so you guys are aware too, so you know how we cut after we finish our project, we cut our yarn long. So I have one for the bottom part, I have one on the right hand side, and then for the top I have it on the other side. So always make sure you have it on the opposite side, obviously, so that you can use this to sew this section closed here, and you can use the other side to sew the other section closed. Okay, so for this side, which is my right hand side, I'm just going to first of all put my yarn in the darning needle eye right there. Now that I have that in, I can now sew my top together here. And the way I do it, and I'm just going to show you guys a little bit of it, and then you guys can do the rest on your own offline. So the way I do it is I just take my crochet hook here, or my darning needle, and I put it through that very first stitch, and then I pick up the very first stitch on the other side, and then I just pull it, and it goes off to the other side. And I repeat by going through the exact same hole again for the second time, and that kind of shuts down that area. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to the next second stitch, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go through both loops again, just like that, and I'm going to close it shut, and I'm going to repeat that one more time. Oh, right here. Okay, and just for those two. So I'm going to do that for those two, and then for the remaining of the stitches all the way until I get to my stitch marker, I am going to be picking up just the inside stitch and then the outside stitch of the other side. So you have both two sides like this. The side that is closest to you, you pick up the inside loop only, and the one that is furthest away from you, this side, you pick out the outside loop only. Okay, and that's going to create a nice seam that doesn't look too visible. So you're just going to do this. You pick up the inside, and the other side you pick out the outside, and you pull, and then you pick out the inside of this side and the outside of the other side, and you pull, and you continue to do this. So this is how your work should look like when it's all done. Okay, so you're going to continue to do this all the way until the stitch right before the stitch marker, because this stitch marker area counts towards your opening. Okay, so until you get to this stitch here, and you can go through both loops to shut this area shut here, and then you take the stitch marker off, and then you move your thread, cut it, move your thread, sew the top down here, and then you repeat the exact same thing on the other side. And when that's done, our top is done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do all of these off camera, as you should as well. When you come back, or when we come back, we should be able to have our top nice and completed. Okay, so I will see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, so I have gone ahead and joined my panels, my two panels here, and this is pretty much how the top looks like. It's all done. This is the place where my arms will come through here. This is the big neckline here. This is gonna be like an off shoulder top, so the neckline is super big. Okay, and this is pretty much the bottom here. It's a little bit snatched, so you don't have to worry about it being too big, but it will definitely be big on top because that's the design of the top. Okay, so that's pretty much it here. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining me to the end of this video, and thank you for watching to the end. And if you have not yet subscribed, please go ahead and do so. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, as well as comment if you have any questions. And also just check out the playlist. I have some playlists on my channel that you may be interested in, some of the things that you'll find in the playlist. So go ahead and check those out. They are part of my channel, okay? All right, well, thank you so much for watching to the end, and I will see you guys in my next video. Kwaheri.